one of the real passions that we have in our states is that we believe in competition. We believe that there is not one size that fits all when it comes to educating our children or delivering health care, building transportation infrastructure, or as you were talking about earlier, the EPA and environmental issues, that the states need to be given more opportunity. You know, that 10th Amendment says that the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, or prohibited to it by the states, or reserved for the states, respectively, or to the people. Washington, D.C., our federal government was envisioned by our founding fathers as being really focused on doing a few things, some enumerated powers, doing those very well, like stand the military. They clearly defined that securing and defending the border of the United States is one of those. I wish they'd just get that part done. Those of us who live on this is the federal government to do its constitutionally mandated duties. And kind of get out of some of those that they have decided over the years. They know best how to tell you and I how to educate your children. Race to the top, one of those examples. They came to Texas. They said, well, Governor, we want you to apply for these federal dollars for this race to the top. That's pretty cool sounding name, race to the top. How could you be against racing to the top? But the strings that were attached were national tests and national standards. And we said, no thanks. We don't want Washington, D.C. bureaucrat telling us how we're going to educate our children, what the standards are going to be. And we had teacher groups standing up with us saying, absolutely not. Governor, you stand your ground. Do not take that money and allow bureaucrats from Washington, D.C. to be telling us how to educate our children. That is a state responsibility. It is the local school board's responsibility. It's those local administrators and teachers working together to decide how to do that. We see it in health care. Obamacare that has been passed. Nationalized health care. And I can't describe it in any other way. It is going to be one size fits all, Washington, D.C., deciding winners and losers. They'll decide who's going to get a waiver, who's not. Bobby and I both understand, having been the governors of states, that we can best decide, the legislatures can best decide, working with the people of our states, how to deliver health care. What is the models that will work best in our states? Having a president of the United States that not only recognizes the importance of our Constitution and the application of that 10th Amendment in particular, is how America gets back to being that competitive place that it needs to be. Bobby shared with you how to get America working again, the tax policy, how to get the spending under control, to balance the budget, to put the 20% flat tax in place. And he shared with you all of those technical programs and policies that we would put in place. Because the issues, and I'm so glad to see as many young people in this room as there is. Because this election is really about you and your age. As you all decide about where you're going to go off to college, and then, am I going to have the opportunity to have a good paying job? Am I going to have the same opportunities that my mom and dad had? And that's what this election is really about. It's about the millions of Americans out there who truly believe that if we can get the governments from overtaxing and over-regulating and giving you your freedoms back, as government has gotten bigger and bigger, our freedoms have gotten smaller and more restrained. There's stand up for your change. I'm not afraid we'll call Social Security a conscious, a broken process, because you know that if it's not transformed, that when you get to retirement, it's not going to be good. Now, there may be one or two in here of you, Claude, you may be Social Security age. I'm making it. I know you feel much younger. I'm thinking you might be Social Security age. Those of you who are on Social Security, or those of you that are my age, that are approaching Social Security, it's going to be there for you. Don't let anyone use a fear tactic and say, "Oh, those Republicans, they're going to, rip your Social Security check out of your hands." To our seniors and those who are approaching age, there's somebody who needs to stand up for them. There's somebody who needs to stand up for them and to say, we're going to transform that system to make sure that Medicaid, as it's delivered back to the states and let governors like Bobby or Susana Martinez, who's over our neighbor on the western side of New Mexico, or Mary Fallon up in Oklahoma, to have them and their legislatures be able to come up with programs that give more diversity, that give more choice. The idea that we can't buy insurance across state lines. I mean, competition works. Competition works whether it's states deciding tax policy, regulatory policy. All of this will make America strong. Our future is in the balance. This election. I'll suggest to you it's going to take an outsider. Someone 11 years to the day who has spent my time as governor pushing back on Washington, D.C., telling Washington often that we know how to deliver a more competitive and compelling set of policies in our state than some faceless bureaucrat that may have never stepped foot into Iowa, into one of the states that they're in. Americans are ready to see a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. I think we're also ready to see Washington truly overhauled. And when I talk about there are some people that say, I have maybe some radical ideas. And a radical idea of making the United States Congress a part-time Congress. I don't think that's radical. I think our founding fathers meant for the Congress to be part-time. And let me share with you why that's not radical, why that's not out of the ordinary. Think about, I have the privilege to serve in a state that if we're a standalone entity would be 13th largest economy in the world. Second most populous state in this nation. Our legislature meets for 140 days every other week. We pay them $600 a month. They come into town. We have a balanced budget amendment to our Constitution. They have a time frame of which they can stay in town to do their work, to pass the legislation that needs to be passed, to balance that budget. Then they go back home. And they work a regular job, living amongst their constituents and under the laws that they pass. Why not? It's not a radical idea, but if you want to radically change what's going on in Washington, D.C., balanced budget amendment to our United States Constitution and a clear change, whether it's we do it constitutionally, which I would suggest to you is probably the quickest and the cleanest way to do it, to require a part-time Congress. We get our country back. But it's going to require us to take this challenge. Us to elect an outsider that will go to Washington, that doesn't have the taint of Washington, D.C. inside it, that doesn't have the taint of a Wall Street. This country has seen the greatest theft in America's history over the course of the last few years, of money taken from Main Street and shifted to Wall Street. I think we're just starting to see the tip of the iceberg as they're starting to investigations into Freddie and to Fannie. They should call it not necessarily Freddie and Fannie. I call it modern day Bonnie and Clyde. They're stealing from the people. Is what's going on. And we need someone who will walk in, who has the discipline, who has the courage to break up that old system. An outsider. And I want to make this pact with you as I wrap up and I'll take some questions if I may. But if you'll have my back on January the 3rd as we go to the caucuses, I'll have your back in Washington, D.C. I'm going to open it up for some questions, and if somebody had one for Bobby, I know he'll be, yes sir, he'll be happy to come over and attempt to answer it as well. Yes sir. Yes, sir. Can I just take off of that? And let me share with you, for 11 years, I've been dealing with that problem as the governor of the state of Texas. 1,200-mile border between my home state and Mexico. Mexico is a unique country in the sense they're our #1 trading partner. But it has been places along that border that is in operational control of these drug cartels. The issue of illegal drugs, the issue of weapons, this whole concept that our federal government was involved with shipping weapons into Mexico, and somehow or another that they were going to track those weapons. And now we're tracking them. We're finding out that American agents have been killed, or at least in one case, Brian Carey, been killed by these, and the Justice Department knowledgeable about it. And I join the members of Congress in calling for the resignation or the firing of Eric Holder. I think it is